The alien girl would have frozen holding her pet, then human appeared and saved them both. The ice moon of Alvera 6 screamed its eternal song across jagged silver ridges, where nothing sane dared to live, except perhaps the glowing moss that pulsed with indignation when disturbed. Shay pressed her back against the skeletal remains of an abandoned relay tower, its metal bones groaning like an ancient creature in pain. The thick cloak of her people, woven with thermal threads and memories of warmer worlds, fought a losing battle against the relentless wind. Her elongated ears, elegant and far too expressive for survival, trembled with each Arctic gust. She had long ago abandoned any pretense of humanity. She wasn't human, didn't want to be, and was currently too frozen to care about such distinctions. Cradled against her chest was her only source of warmth, a small, densely furred creature, with violet eyes that held the emotional range of a dramatic opera singer. Toast, though she'd never dare call him that aloud, was wrapped like an irritable bundle, his tiny paws clutching her scarf as if bracing for impact. He had stopped his usual chittering an hour ago, which terrified her more than the storm. Toast only fell silent when situations became truly apocalyptic. "I told you we shouldn't have taken the west path," she murmured in her native tongue, a language that sounded like silk being drawn across crystal. The creature squeaked in passive-aggressive agreement. Above them, the storm howled with theatrical fury, snow launching itself horizontally rather than falling, stinging her exposed cheekbones and finding every microscopic gap in her protection. Her breathing slowed involuntarily, and her vision began to narrow like a camera lens closing. Then came a sound, mechanical, foreign to this desolate moon. A low, sputtering hum, followed by an ungraceful thunk. Shay blinked, unsure whether exhaustion was finally claiming her sanity. Through the curtain of frost, a dim orange glow appeared, unnaturally warm against the blue-white landscape. A figure stumbled through the blizzard, humanoid, tall, ridiculously bundled in mismatched layers of cloth and exogear. The headgear was dented, one glove was missing, and a backpack trailed behind like it had abandoned all hope of dignity. "Hey!" the shape shouted, voice muffled through static-filled speakers. "Do you need help, or are you part of some really intense snow cosplay?" Shay didn't move. Years of evasion and disappointing diplomatic missions had honed her instincts to razor sharpness. She scanned for weapons, hostile intent, any sign this stranger worked for the Tri-Nexus Syndicate. She found nothing obvious, just exhaustion, confusion, and the mild arrogance of someone who thought flannel socks were acceptable winter gear on Arctic moons. "I brought her some soup," the man said, holding up a metallic thermos decorated with animated fruit stickers. "It's synth beef, or possibly synth rutabaga. Might have been mislabeled. Cora's mad at me." He stepped closer. She flinched. "Toast," growled, a sound like a kazoo attempting intimidation. The man stopped immediately. "Okay, noted. You have a pet. I love that for you. Definitely not going to make sudden moves. Just going to sit right here and freeze politely like a gentleman." With an awkward grunt, he sat cross-legged in the snow. Shay stared at him as if he were a talking icicle. Part 2. Warmth in unlikely places. The stranger unscrewed his thermos, took a sip, and immediately gagged. "Yep," he wheezed. "That's definitely rutabaga, vengeful rutabaga." Shay should have fled, should have vanished into the storm, found another relay tower to die under, one less chatty. But something about his presence cracked through her survival shell. Just a hairline fracture. Maybe it was the absurdity. Maybe the warmth seeping from his gear. Or maybe she was simply tired of being hunted, cold, and alone. She looked down at Toast. The creature blinked once, then nestled closer to her chest with a quiet squeak of cautious approval. The human smiled, teeth chattering. "So is that a yes to sharing body heat? Because full disclosure, I'm like 5 minutes from becoming a man-shaped popsicle." She didn't answer, but she didn't run. That was enough. He called himself Fen, just Fen. No title, no clan name, no honorific, glimmering in his voice. Just a man with frost on his eyebrows and a concerning level of optimism for someone living alone on a moon where even shadows froze solid. They reached his outpost after the storm paused like a tantrum-throwing child, catching its breath. The building was a dome, patched together with leftover modules, emergency tarps, and what suspiciously resembled parts from a children's playground. A cheerful screen flashed as the door groaned open. "Welcome back, Fen. Did you remember to pick up milk?" "Ignore that," he muttered. "Cora gets snippy when she's bored." Shay, still wordless and clinging to the nearly catatonic toast, scanned the interior with narrowed eyes. It smelled of melted polymers and old socks. She was 90% certain something inside the walls was humming a mating call. She'd been in worse places, once, maybe twice. "Okay," Fen said, rubbing his hands together. "Rule 1, don't touch anything that looks self-aware. Rule 2, if the coffee machine offers you a choice between dark roast and the forbidden bean, always choose dark roast. Rule 3, you're safe here." Shay didn't visibly relax, but her shoulders lowered by approximately 1 millimeter. He handed her a blanket that felt like it had been knitted by a cybernetic grandmother. Colorful sheep floating in space, tiny helmets on each woolly head. The absurdity almost broke her. Toast, once placed beside a small heater that promptly attempted to scan his DNA, emitted a long, satisfied warble and passed out on a cushion that may have once been a space toilet seat. Fen continued talking while burning soup, and that's why I don't let the microwave name my plants anymore. It started calling the basil mother, and things got weird. Finally she spoke. Her voice was soft, clear, and wrapped in the cadence of starlight. "You live here alone?" He looked up from his culinary disaster. "Technically, Cora lives here, too, and about 16 dust mites I've given citizenship to. But yeah, just me, one overqualified planetary technician and recreational synth soup ruiner." "Why?" Fen hesitated, poking at the bubbling pot with a spoon that clearly doubled as a thermal conductor. "I was supposed to be studying climate drift patterns, charting residual energy signatures from old mining operations, sciencey stuff. But then funding dried up, everyone else left, and I like quiet, and stars, and not getting yelled at by middle managers with augmented jawlines." Part 3. The dance of trust. Shay studied him carefully. Humans were known for their chaos, for touching things they shouldn't, and building monuments to problems they'd created. But this one had stayed behind on a dead moon, talking to a sarcastic AI and feeding soup to strangers. She looked around more carefully this time. A wall covered in postcards, Earth beaches, Martian opera houses, a blurry picture of a cat wearing jet boots, tools scattered like metallic confetti, a guitar-shaped object with strings made of laser filament. This place wasn't just a shelter, it was lived in, loved even, in a half-deranged, mildly flammable way. "You are odd," she said, at last. "Thank you," he replied solemnly. "It's taken years of practice." The next few hours passed in strange peace. Toast snored like a malfunctioning drone. She mended a torn seam in her cloak while subtly examining every bolt and panel for exits. Fen babbled about meteorites and the time he almost dated a clone, who turned out to be 2 clones pretending to be one. Cora occasionally chimed in with judgmental beeps or passive-aggressive playlist changes. At some point, over half-burned synth rutabaga stew and lukewarm citrus water, Shay looked directly at him and asked, "Do you know what they're chasing?" "Me for?" Fen leaned back in his chair and stared at the low ceiling, which was currently projecting a simulation of distant nebulae swirling in time-lapse beauty. "Nope, not a clue. But I figure if someone's trying to freeze to death hugging a glorified puffball in a snowstorm, They're probably not the bad guy. She didn't smile, but her ears twitched. He took that as a win. Outside, the storm began to rise. Again. But inside the ramshackle dome, warmth flickered, faint, foolish, persistent, almost human. The next morning, the dome smelled like burnt protein and ambition. Fen was crouched beneath a humming control console, muttering to himself while wielding a wrench with the confidence of someone who once fixed a gravity regulator with chewing gum and shame. Warning, Cora's voice echoed from overhead speakers, sharp as ever. Your current method of repair violates 9 safety codes and 3 moral ones. Please reconsider before electrocuting your internal organs. I'm not dead yet, Fen grumbled. Pity, Cora replied. From across the room, Shay watched the exchange with skeptical eyes. She had slept little, half alert in a bed that tried to vibrate. Her dreams into submission. Toast had taken full advantage, curling up on her chest like a tiny, smug solar panel. I think your kitchen appliances are sentient, she said, without looking up from the cloak she was resealing. Fen popped his head, up face streaked with soot. Only partially. The toaster's still in therapy since the blender left. They had a complicated relationship. He grinned, but Shay didn't return it. Her mind was turning quietly and quickly. She hadn't meant to stay the night, but something about this oddball human and his outpost full of relics and sass had made her pause. And worse, feel. Fen, she said suddenly, you said you don't know why I'm being hunted. Shay glanced at Toast. The creature made a noise like a soft sneeze, then continued eating his antenna-shaped pastry. This one, she said at last, stroking the creature's soft fur. He's not just a companion, he's a vault. My people use a method of encoding memory into the neural lattice of genetically altered symbionts. He carries information, dangerous information. Fen blinked. So he's basically a fluffy external hard drive with feelings. She nodded. He turned to Toast. Well, I hope you're not storing spoilers for my favorite shows in there. Toast blinked both sets of eyelids and burped. But why? Fen leaned forward. What kind of info is worth chasing someone to a frozen moon at the edge of the system? Shay hesitated, her fingers curling around the hem of her cloak. Plans, designs, something Trinexus wants to erase from history. A weapon or a cure. Perhaps both. I took it, I ran. I didn't expect to make it this far. Fen was silent for a moment, then whistled softly. You know, you're lucky you ran into me instead of, say, Bob from the Ice Rangers down south. That guy once arrested a penguin for impersonating a drone. She raised an eyebrow. Long story. Alcohol was involved, possibly on the penguin side. Despite herself, Shay's lips twitched just barely. Fen caught it like a shooting star, his grin widening. You're laughing at me in your head, aren't you? No, she said. I'm laughing at both of us. They lapsed into a quieter rhythm after that. She inspected the outpost's filtration system and promptly improved it with the insertion of 2 crystalline chips and a firm slap. Fen stared in awe. Okay, I don't know what you did, but now the water tastes like honesty and melted lightning. Purification. Efficiency increased by 62%, Cora chimed in. Also, the toilet now sings lullabies. Fen beamed. Best accidental house guest ever. But as night fell again, the mood shifted. Shay stood by the outer hatch, gazing at the storm curling on the horizon like a sleeping predator. Her long ears twitched at every rumble of wind. They'll find me soon, she said. Fen joined her, mug in hand. Then we'll cross that ice bridge when it cracks under us. I don't want you to get involved. Too bad. You already made yourself my problem. Shay looked at him. Really looked. His face was open, tired, stubborn, human. And for the first time, in a very long time, she didn't feel entirely alone in the universe. Not yet safe, but less alone. In the days that followed, the storm became a steady companion, growling outside the dome like an overfed beast with boundary issues. Inside, however, life found an unexpected rhythm. Shay adjusted to her new orbit, like a comet forced into domesticity. She woke early, tuned the outpost sensors with surgical precision, reprogrammed the AI firewall, which briefly caused Cora to develop a fondness for 1980s Earth soap operas, and even managed to teach Toast how to use the hygiene station. Sort of. He still occasionally mistook shampoo for pudding. Their conversations deepened like the snow outside, slowly layering, gradually softening sharp edges. She told him fragments of her world, the high arches of wind cathedrals where her people sang to storms, the crystalline lakes that whispered secrets through ice. He told her of Earth's oddities, pets that wore sweaters, food that came in aerosol cans, and something called karaoke that involved publicly regretting musical choices. "So," Fen said one evening while scraping burnt stew from a pan, "your ears, they help you hear better, like superhero better. Can you hear what I'm thinking right now?" "I can't hear thoughts." "Good, because right now I'm mentally apologizing to your species for everything I've ever cooked." She almost smiled. But humor, no matter how persistent, could not drown out the rising tide of consequence. Every scan Shay ran came back with the same pattern: movement in orbit, stealth satellites, probably Tri-Nexus-owned, triangulating. Pings from her old signals, they were narrowing in. She didn't tell Fen at first. She told herself it was protection, that he deserved peace. But one morning, when Toast screeched at the console and launched a spoon at the ceiling, Fen looked up and said, "Okay, I assume that wasn't just a tantrum about breakfast." "They're coming," she admitted. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just nodded, wiped his hands on a towel and said, "All right then, time to clean the guest room." "You already gave me a bed." "I mean the escape tunnel. Figured we might need it one day. Also figured you'd fix it because the original design was based on a plumbing schematic and half a pizza box." Her heart thudded, not from fear, but from the strange realization that she had somehow stumbled into an alliance. Not a contract, not a bargain, something messier, something warmer. They worked together over the next few days, reinforcing the dome's perimeter, rerouting power from non-essentials, goodbye laser chessboard, and camouflaging external sensors, with snow-dispersing nanopaint that Toast insisted on rolling in. He was now permanently a light shade of reactive silver. At night, huddled near the heater sipping whatever vaguely edible beverage Fen had concocted, Shay would listen to the hum of the dome and realize it no longer sounded like a cage. "You." "No," Fen said once, tossing a frozen pea at Toast's head and missing. "You're probably the most interesting thing to happen to me since the ceiling collapsed in the shower, and I met a very confused, very naked repair droid." "You have strange luck. I prefer the term narrative momentum." The storm outside deepened, whispering like a secret being passed between stars. Inside, for the first time in many years, Shay felt something akin to stillness. Not safety, but stillness. It would not last, but it was hers. The knock on the dome was polite. 3 crisp raps, as if someone were delivering a package instead of initiating capture. The spell broke like ice cracking under pressure. But even as Tri-Nexus agents surrounded their haven, even as escape tunnels beckoned and dangers loomed, something had fundamentally changed. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, between the warmth of shared soup and the cold of approaching threat, 2 souls from different worlds had found each other. And in the end, as they ran through glowing ice tunnels toward an uncertain future, hands clasped tight against the darkness, that was enough. Love didn't need safety to be real. It just needed 2 people willing to choose each other, again and again. Even when the universe conspired against them, the stars had brought them together on a frozen moon where nothing was supposed to survive. Now, together, they would write their own constellation across the void.